So Carrie, just so you know, this is going out to YouTube Live. So if anybody wants to watch it, the public, they can watch it.
Oh, sure. Now you tell me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Pardon my scraggly appearance. I'm cutting grass and I thought it was stupid to take a shower. So
No worries. It's all good.
Rob hasn't showered in 2 weeks, so it's okay.
all right.
All right, I think we're live.
Okay.
All right.
So 3 topics for today. The liability insurance, spending trends, and then the suggestions for savings and revenue. Since Carrie's here, I wanted to go ahead and do the liability insurance part first, so we don't make her sit through all the rest of this stuff.
I appreciate that.
And I had mailed out, Carrie added another column, another community to the data that I collected. You know, I had Mariemont, Newtown, Fairfax, Terrace Park, Columbia Township, and then Carrie was able to get us Evendale's coverage as well for each of the same areas, same properties or whatever. So, and Carrie, you said next week is when you probably will have the pricing.
Yeah,
One of the reasons I want to have this conversation now too was just in looking at us relative to some of the other communities, I wanted to check and see if some of our levels of coverage made sense, because it seems like in some places we're higher than others, or so, and to maybe incorporate that in when you get the when you do the next package for us about what the cost would be and stuff like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely get options. Underwriting's really good about providing options for increasing or decreasing your liability limits, so shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, the only thing I noticed was that the under the crime coverage, the forgery, alterations, computer fraud, ours was like 100,000. Everybody else was like 5,000. I don't know if that's
Right.
why that's so high for us.
Well, hey, how about this? Can we start at the top? Because actually, Tony, I agree with you. Let's start at the top, because I actually have some ones a little bit further up even that I just had questions about to make sure.
Yeah.
So starting at the top, going down, earthquake and volcanic eruption. It's weird. It seems like it's all over the board there. I mean, we have 1 million. Columbia Township does 1 million. Terrace Park has 3.2. Fairfax has 4.6. And Newtown is not covered at all for that. Is that, I mean, what's your experience, Carrie, in terms of, I mean, it seems like it's clearly more for the earthquake than the volcanic coverage we're getting here.
Right. You know, we review things every year. You guys take a look at, I send everything to Joni. I think she kind of spreads everything out and kind of has all the department heads take a look at everything. And these are certainly things we can revisit all the time. As far as trying to determine, you know, why some community may have higher limits, no limits, whatever, it's really been based off of their level of comfortability. I know we're not a hot spot for earthquakes, but we've had them. Mm-hmm. You know, I would wager eventually we'll have a pretty significant one. I don't think like anything we'll see in, you know, that they see in California or wherever, and to that magnitude, probably not. But it's really kind of just stuff that every community goes through and decides what they want. Newtown is in terms of flood coverage, I don't think they have any because they're in a floodplain. So I believe that they actually have NFIP coverage. So that's a determination too. I mean, anybody is subject to a flood. Even, I mean, I live up on top of a hill and sometimes we get deluges of water, and we've had the school flood, and you would never think. You're certainly not in a flood zone where I am. So it's just really a comfortability level of what you guys feel. And you know your community better than I do, what you've got around you in terms of flood, whether you have creeks that you think would at some point jeopardize or cause any kind of issue for you from that standpoint. Yeah. But those are always things we can get options on. Okay. But my personal thought is, well, one, I don't spend your money. And two, if you don't think that there's a huge exposure, why would you want to spend the money? Yeah. You know what I mean?
So it seems like the million for the earthquake. Again, it's on the low end. It's not as low as Newtown, but it's on the low end. So it seems like it's more like just basic fundamental coverage. Like you said, if there's any kind of bigger tremors or things like that that could cause cracks or something, I don't know. So
Yep, exactly. Or even just, you've got some artifacts in there that could simply fall and break and just general things like that, things that can just simply break if the earth shakes a bit, falls off, even, so.
Okay, so just reaching out to the other members here. It feels like having something there is okay. I mean, I don't think it would make a sense for us to go quite as high as Fairfax or Terrace Park in terms of that coverage.
And too, what I can do, and I think we've done this for Joni in the past, is once we bind coverage, we can send you an Excel spreadsheet that actually shows a premium breakdown. So you'll know exactly how much premium you're paying for that earthquake coverage.
Okay, that'd be good. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Okay, so going down the first page, then still special property coverage. Again, that one seems we're sort of on the high side on that one. The special property unscheduled equipment, 5,000 or less. And we have 95,000, Newtown 5,000, Fairfax 15, Terrace Park 150, Columbia Township 50. So is there something that would be driving that for us to have a higher level and 950 instead of, and 95,000 instead of 50,000 or something like that?
Well, it's all dependent on the type of equipment you have. So you have scheduled equipment, which is everything with a replacement cost value that exceeds $5,000. So that would be any of your maintenance equipment, tractors. It can include police equipment, things like that. The unscheduled are items that the Ohio plan only requires you to schedule items with replacement costs that exceeds $5,000. The unscheduled is for those smaller items, hand tools, blowers, trimmers, things like that. Smaller things that you use to maintain the village that you don't want to sit and list every teeny tiny thing on a schedule. So
Right.
It's all dependent on how much of that equipment you have. If you look at Evendale, they've got a huge amount. I mean, they've got a ton of scheduled and a ton of unscheduled. So, it's just dependent upon what each entity has in terms of that type of equipment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you guys think? Kelly, Joe, Tony, Bill?
Yeah.
Just so to me, it just feels like, again, I'm looking for areas where we can, I don't want to get rid of it, obviously, but if
Right.
there's ways we can.
I always, because I'm an insurance geek, I look at things in worst case scenarios. So and we've seen them recently. We saw them last year where you've got tornadoes moving through. If something were to take out a good portion of your village and a lot of your properties, would you be able to replace all of the equipment you lose for that $95,000?
Right. And
Or 95,
but you're
yeah.
saying this is all the equipment that's like the smaller stuff, less than $5,000 in value, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, so it wouldn't include like any of the big equipment that the maintenance department has. It'd be,
Trucks, tractors. the big-
Right. That should all be on the scheduled part.
right, so this
Yeah.
would be like you said. just
The
enhanced
odds of
one.
losing all your small tools, in any one catastrophe, I think are very small, extremely
Yep.
small. I mean, a lot of that kind of stuff, it might be damaged slightly or something, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't work. I bet you could drop that number down to 50,000, Rob.
That's what I was thinking. Just,
Yeah, and whatever gets broke, Kevin can fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next one I got to media and data. I mean, again, now we're the highest. We are the highest one there in terms of coverage. And so, and then there's that line called extra expense. So this is under computer coverage.
Right.
Is there, what might be driving that, Carrie? Do you know? I mean, why would we have so much? I mean, literally 3 times more than anybody else.
Well, again, so the Ohio plan automatically does increases on your equipment, all of your equipment, all of your properties. So it varies. And if you've got a higher amount of software, that's what's driving that. So again, the limits that you're seeing are limits that you guys are providing. If you don't have, and forgive me, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me. I'll lose you guys all if I don't, if I pull it up, but, so, you know, it's important to have everybody check those things when we send the renewal apps out. But certainly if you don't have media and software that values that amount, we definitely need to lower it.
Okay.
That might be an Eli question, Rob.
Yeah, I just wrote her name down next to it. I agree. But again, I don't know why we would have 3 times the amount of, every other one is less
It
than
seems
$11,000.
Yeah, it seems high.
Yeah. And then what does extra expense mean here in that same category? Because again, we're 3 times higher than everybody else, again, in that category.
So if you were to have a loss to computer equipment and you needed to rent or you know, well, renting is the best scenario until yours is repaired or replaced, and you had an extra expense in order to do that after a covered cause of loss, then it would pay under the extra expense.
Okay, so renting until replaced.
Basically, I'm sure
Okay.
there are other factors in there that, you know, other types of scenarios that would be covered, or that would provide coverage for. But for the most part, it's if you were to rent something that you needed
Mhm.
until your equipment was replaced or repaired.
Okay, okay. So I guess, yeah, that'll be another Eli question. I can ask her about that.
Yeah. Definitely seems high.
So, and guys, if I'm going down and there's another one I'm passing up that you want to bring up, obviously go ahead and do that. I highlighted, when I sent you guys the ones, I'd highlighted some ones in red that caught my eye. And the next one was the one that Tony had mentioned under crime coverage, forgery alterations, computer fraud, fund transfer fraud. This one's, we're 20 times higher than everybody else. I'm like, whoa, what's going on there? So help me understand, Carrie, what's the driver for, I mean, everyone else is like 5,000 or 2,500 or something like that. And we're at 100,000.
So those lower limits on most of the crime are what the Ohio plan includes at no additional charge. It's just part of the plan. And then you have options to increase those in layers. So again, these are limits, and forgive me, because you guys have been members since 1993, but I've just come along as your rep in the last 6 years. So I know that we've covered, you know, increasing and adjusting limits on certain things. Crime isn't one that I guess I didn't do my job and really review it, but you know, obviously those are things that you guys need to evaluate and determine what your exposure is against. So your employee theft is one thing, and you also have bonds in place. So you have bonds for your fiscal officer and your assistant fiscal officer. Both of those are, if I read the sheet right, we've got $25,000 on each of them. And then we also have a bond on Mayor Brown. So as far as employee theft goes, the rest, all of the employees within the village, other than those that are bonded, would be covered under the employee theft. The forgery and alteration, again, if you think that you have a potential issue for forgery, which I don't know that you do, but the crime coverage is actually for those other than the employee dishonesty or employee theft are relatively inexpensive. And again, if that's something you want to lower, I say go for it.
Yeah. I mean, that just seems so high relative to everybody else. And I would lower the deductibles too, just to make the deductibles more in line with what the other have as well.
I would, though, the one coverage that I think is pretty significant there is social engineering. It's basically phishing. So let's say your fiscal officer gets an email from whom he thinks is Joni or Mayor Brown or whomever and says, hey, can you send this payment of $50,000 or whatever to such and such, and they send off the money. Come to find out it was a false email address, or they, you know, criminals are pretty crafty. They mirrored everything, but maybe made one change to the email address to make it look like yours. That money's gone. That happens a lot. So if you're gonna, I would consider maybe thinking about that, or at least putting checks in place to say, okay, if you get a weird request for a payment on something, maybe you should get up, instead of sending an email back to the person, get up, pick up the phone, do something, and just check and make sure that that's not an issue, or that it's not something that they really need to pay, if it's a correct payment. that happens, that we've seen quite a bit of that. So,
Yep. No, I get phishing emails all the time at my work. So,
oh yeah, it's crazy.
okay. Yeah. And that's the funny, because that's the one coverage that is consistent with everybody else so far. So,
Yeah.
but then we have a much higher deductible on that one. So anyway, I think, I don't know, again, Kelly, Joe, I think we ought to be moving more in line with, and Tony, you as well, Phil, yeah. But, that we ought to be moving more in line with what the other communities have as well in those areas. What do you guys think?
Oh, I agree on that.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, 100,000, like you said, 20 times as much is a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know, there could have been back when they had these, when they started with these limits, I mean, again, I've been around for about 6 years, but you don't know what the prior, you know, administrations and staffing, what kind of concerns they had at the time. So, you know, there are definitely things you need to evaluate every year.
Yeah. And again, also consistent with this, I would also move the deductibles to be in line with the other communities as well. So for all those same areas.
Yeah, I mean, the deductibles are definitely something to look at, and just to make sure that if in the event of that kind of loss, that it's something that the village can afford.
Right.
One thing to remember, a lot of times deductibles really aren't a pricing factor with the Ohio plan. Higher deductibles are sometimes used by underwriting as kind of a tool in order to minimize losses. If you have a frequency issue or severity issue and you have a lot of losses of a particular type, they'll really use those as a tool in order to kind of make the entity a little more responsible for some of the losses versus, you know, just turning everything into the insurance company and filing a claim, because ultimately a lot of claims, you know, what ends up happening with a lot of claims. So they're used as an underwriting tool sometimes. So a lot of times they're not really a cost saver.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So then the next one gets into, a lot of these are the liability, employee benefits liability, employee liability. Seems to be like, once you said it on a individual bodily injury, then there's an aggregate. So those seem to go hand in hand, right?
Yep.
Because I'm looking down and every one of these, once a community sets a threshold, it seems to be like they're consistent then within that area. And then this would also link to the document you sent us about the loss run. Is that right? In terms of, is that one of the things we ought to be looking at?
The loss runs, those are certainly a factor in what's going to drive your renewal premium. I can tell you, I did get some information today, waiting on the proposal because I was checking with underwriting to see where we were. And losses are certainly something that affects you in two ways with the Ohio plan. One is, of course, your rate. Higher your loss ratio, the higher your rate. And it also affects you with your advantage credit. The advantage credit is basically a rebate that the Ohio plan gives. And it's based off of your loss, not only your loss history and your loss ratio, but off of your risk management practices. So you have 60 points for loss ratio and 40 for risk management. You guys typically are doing everything you're supposed to be doing from a risk management standpoint and get your full points for that. So the points for your loss ratio tend to be lower because your loss ratio is a bit higher. And I did get your last 5-year loss ratios as well as your historical. So in 2016, and I'll include all of this when I send you your renewal proposal next week or we talk about it, I'll include all of this as well. But for 2016, your loss ratio was 7%, which is awesome. 2017, it increased to 48%.
Wow.
And you know, and it's not necessarily because of anything you guys did. There are probably weather related claims in there. There was at one point, I think you did have a flood issue. It ended up being like a sewer backup. So that was something that,
Yeah,
that is,
fire department.
yep, exactly. And then 2018, it went up to 82%. 2019, it went to 95%. And so far in 2020, you're at 86%. Historically, since 1993, your loss ratio for the entire time you've been a member of the Ohio plan is 234%. So basically what that means is for every dollar in premium we've collected from you, they've paid out $2.34.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
but I know that sounds awful. And nobody wants to hear that yet. But it's all relative. You know what I mean?
Hey,
So,
Carrie, can I ask you a quick question here? You just quoted a number that our loss ratio and for the past year has been what, 80%?
86.
86 so far for 2020.
Okay, I'm looking at the loss run and we only have $2,200 worth of claims in the
It's
last
a
12
running,
months.
so it's a running loss ratio. So,
Okay,
so
so what's happening then is that large claim we had probably 20 years ago, it's still in the numbers.
it's in the 234%, but it's not in the last 5 years. No. When underwriting is looking at your account and looking at your losses, they're not doing a running total for the 20 years. That's where the historical is. The last 5 is where they start to, because you're never going to have claims that don't cross over into the next term. You know what I mean? It would be ideal if
Okay,
you could
but
have a
I'm
claim.
kind of running some numbers in my head here based on what's been provided. And our premium every year is about $30,000 a year, 35,000.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay. To get to a 80% loss ratio in the last 5 years, you're talking about somewhere, what, $300,000 worth of claims?
Without looking at, I get my information from underwriting, and this is what they've done with all of the premiums, so we can go through and check them.
But again, my question is, I don't see $300,000 worth of claims in the last 5 years on the loss run. So that's where I'm just kind of wondering where these numbers are coming from.
Well, part of your premium includes, and percentage wise, I don't know what those are. Also includes membership fees and things like that. So that aren't contemplated. So what I'll do is I'll get with underwriting and we'll do a spreadsheet. I don't know how long this will take me, but we'll go through and I'll do, and I just did this for Evendale, get each annual premium, and then we'll show how the losses correlate and how they run. Does that make sense? Just try and get you.
No, that's fine, because like what I'm looking at in the last 12 months, there's about $2,200 worth of claims versus $30,000 in premiums. That's a pretty good number. And then the year before was right around 10,000 in claims on a $30,000 premium. So our loss ratio should be lower. That's not the only question. I don't know what they're using for the premium number. Everything we pay, or
Sure.
You said there's some membership fees and other stuff.
Yep.
So somewhere something's missing in the equation.
Yep, I would agree with you. And forgive me, because I honestly have not had time to go through them and look at all of them. So, so we'll do that. I'll get a spreadsheet together. Like I said, I just did one for Evendale, and we'll get it all figured out and see, and I'll get a better understanding of where underwriting's coming from with those premiums.
Okay, very good.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So then going back to the dollar amounts on these liability coverage areas, again, we're 6 million on an individual and 8 million aggregate. And again, when I look across, we got Newtown at 4 million and 6 million, Fairfax at 5 million and 7 million, Terrace Park is at 6 million and 8 million like us, and Columbia Township is 4 and 6. So again, Terrace Park, and then we just got the Evendale numbers, and they're 10 and 12.
Yeah.
Rob, I just want to say, I know like Mayor Dan, he was in the insurance business and he was probably a little more conservative on some of the stuff and got higher limits on some things. Just throwing that out there for a little history.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful, Tony, because it does feel feels like we could get down to at least Fairfax's level of 5 and 7,
I actually think I recall us talking about this last year, Rob, where I think we were kind of further into the process and we wanted to just go ahead and. And so I think this is a great idea to do. So, you know, you've got 2 months before you renew. So let's get it tweaked and get your level of coverage where you're comfortable. But I would tend to agree that, you know, it's certainly not going to hurt you to lower your limit.
And would that be related to the loss run that you gave us as well? I mean, just looking at the history of claims there, or is that
Probably not. You don't have any significant liability claims that I saw.
right?
So you know, and again, with your immunities, Evendale has a huge limit, mainly because they have the money,
Yeah.
you know,
GE and all.
sorry, but I mean, it's true. They have the money to do it. And, you know, they've got GE there, they've got, you know, the access to 75 and all of that, where, you know, they've talked about lowering limits, but then they decided against it just because of some of their exposures. But I certainly think you guys, a $5 million limit is well within a reasonable limit for you guys, really. Like I said, I don't recall seeing anything large from a liability standpoint.
No, the largest one I can see so far, I just glancing through this, was 1.78 million. Was
Yeah.
the biggest one I could see. So
Yeah, that was quite a while ago.
yeah, 96, no, 95. Okay, so yeah, I think Kelly, Bill, Tony, Joe.
Yeah, I think we could lower.
I think we can lower it at least $1 million each
Yeah.
one.
Or,
Yeah.
Look at Joe.
Okay, can we just see the premium numbers? Because I think Carrie can attest to this. When you start dropping the numbers on that excess layers, it's usually not much premium amounts. You know, it's not like you're going to drop the liability premiums by 1/6 by taking that 5 million to 6 million layer off. That price is a lot less than that first $1 million of coverage.
The typically the additional premium between $1 million layers is anywhere between $1,200 and $1,500.
On each layer, or as you get higher, doesn't it drop?
It's per layer. No, it's not like regular insurance, not like regular excess insurance, because you have to remember that you're not with standard excess insurance or umbrella coverage, you're sharing that limit. The Ohio plan limits are siloed, which means every liability coverage has that $5 million or $6 million limit. So you could have a $6 million occurrence under your general liability. You can have $6 million under your employer's liability, and you can have, so instead of sharing that umbrella among all those coverages, you're actually having a $6 million limit per coverage. Does that make sense? We call them siloed versus shared.
That's pretty much contrary to everything else I've seen in the insurance industry. But you know,
Well,
if that's the way it works with the Ohio plan, that's fine. But
that is how it
typically, you
works.
pay a lot
Yep.
less for each additional $1 million as you increase the limits.
Yep, that's not how it is in the Ohio plan. With standard insurance, I spent 23 years with Liberty Mutual as an underwriter. So that's how it is in standard insurance. With typically a layer for an excess liability policy is about $300 to $350, depending on the carrier. Could range anywhere up to $5. But yeah, you're right, it is significantly lower, but that's because you're sharing that limit.
Okay. So sounds like we definitely, I mean, again, if it could save $1,200 on the premium by going from 5 to 6 and from 8 to 7, or from 6 to 5, 6 to 5 and 8 to 7.
right,
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
Okay. So that's all the different liabilities. And then, so the last one, well, not, yeah, I guess it might be, well, no, it's not quite the last one. Under cyber. So for some reason we have the same kind of coverage, but then the deductible is much lower. But you're saying that really doesn't impact the premium that much? Is that the case in cyber as well, Carrie?
And no, that's not the case in cyber. So when the Ohio plan first added cyber to the plan, this was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. They made only one limit and one deductible available. That was $250,000 limit with a $25,000 deductible. Over the last several years, just feedback from members and from other agents, they decided to add deductible options and limit options. So we now have options for limits of 500,000 and $1 million, as well as the 250,000, and deductible options of 5 and 10,000. So last year, I think we lowered your deductible because we talked about, what could the village afford in the event of a breach? And 5,000. So the pricing for 5,000, I think it was last year that we changed it, was reasonable. And then we talked about stair stepping it. I recommend to all of my clients to try and get the maximum limit available with the lowest deductible that you can afford, because it's not going to be a matter of if you're ever breached, it's going to be a matter of when.
Yeah. So,
and you guys have a lot of information.
So you said 5 and 10, but like right now it looks like Newtown and Fairfax and Columbia Township all had $25,000 deductible. Or is that?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said 5 and 10 were the only choices, but 5, 10, and 25 are the choices?
No, they just added those additional options. I'm sorry. Yeah. So you have deductible options of 25,000, 10,000, and 5,000, and limit options of 250,000, 500,000, and $1 million.
Okay, got it. 5, 10.
And I actually think, if I recall, we can do 2 million and 3 million.
What?
On the Ohio plan side. Or is that my school side? I have to verify that. I think you can get options higher.
Yeah, well, to be very honest with you, I'm not pushing to take us higher on the coverage, because it seems to be consistent with most of the other communities. But the our deductible is really low. That was
Rob, if I remember correctly, I think we had this discussion last year, and and I believe Carrie's point kind of was, it's not a matter of, if you get hit, it's when you get hit. And, if we did, we were going to have to lay out the 25,000 in the deductible. I think that's why we opted for the 5.
right.
Yep.
So what I would like to do is get the pricing for what would 10 be.
Yeah. We could get.
I don't want to go all the way up to 25. I agree with you, Bill. I don't want to go all the way up to 25.
Yeah.
But seems like we could see, Terrace Parker's got 10. So why don't we go ahead and just see what the cost would be if it was 10?
Yeah, well, that's reasonable.
But I'm gonna keep this and just keep this in your mind as well. I work with all of those communities that you have listed on there, and I have the same conversation with all of them, and we're all working, and most of them are stair stepping it as well. So this year they may be lowering their deductible. I know that's what was the case with Terrace Park. So this year they're lowering their deductible. Next year they're going to probably increase the limit. So, if you're already one step ahead of Terrace Park in terms of lowering your deductible, that's another thing that I'll give you when I show you your proposal, is give you all the options for all of the limits available and for all of the deductibles available, and let you make your choice there. But I wouldn't consider, if you've already got a $5,000 deductible, I wouldn't consider increasing that unless it's something you can afford and that you want to do.
Okay.
I don't think that's, that I would be advising you properly if I suggested that. Any other type of coverage, I probably would say, if that's what you want to do, you understand the consequences and all of that and what's going to come out of your pocket, and that's cool. But with cyber, those expenses add up.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would strongly recommend however long it takes you to do it, get your limit up and get your deductible to the lowest amount that you're able to afford. And if you can afford 10,000, that's cool too. But I don't think the savings will be significant enough for you to want to do that. But again, I'll show you all the options.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be very helpful. Okay. And then I guess for me, at least, the last one I had a question on was the malicious assailant.
Yep.
I didn't see that. Does Evendale have that?
So
No.
this is a new coverage this year. Last year it was part of, it was actually included as part of the terrorism coverage at no charge. We've added it to the Ohio plan as of January 1st. It's an optional coverage, and with optional limits as well. And that's something I'll include in your proposal too. So the coverages are much different than, as you can see what you've got listed on the spreadsheet there. You've got funeral expenses and counseling and things like that. Those are things that weren't included when the coverage was initially included in the terrorism coverage. We pulled it out of there, and because it was because it was part of the terrorism coverage, it was a fully reinsured coverage, versus now it's a separate optional coverage. You can decide whether you want it or not. And again, I'll show you the options on that as well.
Okay.
Carrie, just for a refresher, the malicious assailant thing, that's when an employee that you terminate or something gets mad at you and then they do something? Is that what that
It
is?
could be an employee, but it could be somebody off the street. It could be someone who, it could be a resident who didn't like that, Mayor Dan's gone and you're in there now, Bill, and he comes in with the intent to.
Hey, what's not to like?
That's it. That's it. Bump the coverage.
Yeah, well, the coverage.
But it's not.
Yeah.
But it's not only just for, it actually those coverages, you all of course would be covered under your workman's comp, and they're supplementary to you. But we can also, it also benefits anyone who's attending a meeting, and it's not just someone who comes to a meeting. If you're sponsoring something in the park, if any sponsored event by the village, and an assailant comes in having planned an attack, it has to be a planned attack. It's not just, somebody coming in off they would determine coverage, but you hope that doesn't happen. Again, it's just a kind of an added benefit. It's optional. And again, we can have more discussion about it with the proposal, but it was a nice coverage, I think, add that they decided to do. It was added just a couple of months after an incident that occurred, oh gosh, on the East Coast somewhere, where someone walked into a city council meeting and shot it up. And so,
Yep.
yeah, so.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
I didn't have any other questions. You guys, I'm going to open it up for you other guys. Anybody else?
Well, so Carrie, you're going to get back with us for information. When's your anticipated date for that?
I should have everything early next week. But if you want to email me all those changes you guys want to look at or want to go ahead and make, we'll just get everything incorporated and have a proposal that reflects all of that.
Will you be able to share with us? Because one of the things I think was really helpful last year is we were able to sit there and talk about, well, if we left things the way they were, the price would have been X, but because we made these changes, the price is now Y.
Yeah.
So that'll be helpful for us to compare those two.
Yep, we can do that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
No,
Any
you have
other
any questions?
questions?
Good.
A couple quick questions. I saw something on here about flood and mudslide.
Yep.
Does that coverage come through the federal plans, or is that something that's insured directly by Ohio plan, or where does that come from?
Yep, it's part of the Ohio plan coverage. The Ohio plan can't provide flood coverage for federal flood zones. So if you were in a flood zone A, or I believe A or V, we wouldn't be able to include those properties. So this would be coverage for any type of flood incident that occurs at any of your locations that aren't in a federal floodplain.
Okay, and then what about mudslide? Is that, what's that coverage look like? I mean, is that covering earth movements, I'm assuming, or?
It's covered in the actual flood coverage as well. So if we have heavy rains and mudslides a result of that rain, that's where that would be, where they would contemplate that.
Can you send something that summarizes that coverage so we can take a look at it?
Sure.
I'd like to see that. The conversation about earthquake coverage, I think everybody kind of thinks, we aren't California, but we're actually pretty close to an active fault.
Yeah.
The Madrid fault that runs up the Mississippi River, and some theorize that it actually comes up the Ohio River Valley too. So we're actually in a higher risk zone than people realize as far as earthquakes. So as we take a look at that, amount of coverage, just consider that, we're not completely immune to the possibility of earthquakes in this area.
Yep.
COVID coverage, I'm assuming there's no COVID coverage. Most of the insurance contracts exclude that or exclude infectious diseases. So I'm assuming the Ohio plan does the same.
That is correct.
All right. And then what about social unrest? What's the coverage look like for that?
That's excluded as well. There are
Is that
specific
a
exclusions
possibility
for
or is
riot
that
and civil.
something that,
No, they won't. I know for sure they won't do it. I'll check and see if there's anything. I don't know of any standard insurance. Now, I will tell you this, if, it's my understanding that, let's say, since fire is a covered cause of loss, it's quite possible that in the event of a fire loss, even if it's caused by riot or civil disobedience, it's possible that that would be covered because fire is a covered cause of loss. Now, if you're talking bricks and things like that being thrown during a riot, that's another story. But I've had this question actually twice today, and I was planning on calling our claims department to see what their thoughts on that were. It would be like, well, that's a bad example. If the impending loss is a covered one, or if the ultimate loss is due to a covered cause of loss, I would think that there is coverage. But again, we'd have to find out, and I'll check with claims.
all right, good.
But yeah, those are no insurance carrier, no insurance. For as long as I've been in the business, 32 years, have I ever seen coverage for riot and civil disobedience.
Yeah, I believe it's all excluded by contract.
Yep.
There's, specific lines for that. No wars, no insurrections, no social unrest. Typically,
Yeah,
it's one of
exactly.
the exclusions of the insurance
Exactly.
contract. So.
Okay, any other questions from folks for Carrie?
No, not for me.
Not for me.
Nope.
Very good job.
Thank you,
Thank
Gary.
you. So let me ask you this, when I get the proposal and everything, I'll obviously email it over to you and along with the other information. If you want to have another separate meeting, or you want me to come to, or I don't know if you're doing your council meetings in the same format, or if you're meeting in person, I'm happy to come. I don't have an issue with that. So just let me know how you want to deliver it. There are some other things within the plan that I usually like to cover when I'm proposing. So however you want to do it, just let me know, but I'll get everything emailed out to you when I get it next week.
Okay, great.
But if you would just email me the changes you want to see in the proposal, we'll get those included in there.
Okay, I will take care of that, and I'll copy you guys to make sure that I've captured everything correctly too then.
Awesome. Anything else?
Can't think of anything, you guys?
Nope. Back to mowing,
Alrighty.
Carrie.
Have a good day. Enjoy the weather.
Thanks. Back in the
Talk
yard,
to you
get back in
soon.
that yard work.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, get back to
Thanks.
work. right.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Okay, good. That was good conversation. So second and third topic were related to the financials year to date and stuff like that. So one of the things actually, Joe, I want to give Joe credit where credit is due. I sent you the spreadsheet, and you can take a look at this stuff too. Starting at the left, Joe would help pull together some bigger picture things to help understand where we are. And this is just for, the first one was Mariemont only, and it's cash, the cash that's on the books minus any debt that we had. And then Joe also put it into a graph to sort of show that net balance, what's going on with that net balance over time. And right now, again, at the end
Can I put a caveat in, Rob? So these
Sure.
schedules are all subject to change. They're draft schedules at this point. So there's a couple of numbers that I still need to run down to finalize them. So, but it's okay to talk the generic or overall trends, but some of the numbers may change a little bit as I, able to get more solid numbers in a couple of years. So.
Yep. But again, I think the overall trend is still not going to change dramatically, right, Joe? Unmute.
I mean, the trend is what the trend is, and those numbers may change slightly by getting the actual data on a couple of line items, but I don't think that graph is going to change much in appearance.
Right. Yeah, that was my point. My point was the overall picture doesn't change. Maybe it tweaks it a little bit, but not the overall trend line.
Right.
So,
I just wanted to say, I looked at I usually look at things like general fund separately from the other funds. And I did a little trend with the general fund. Back in 2010, we had $1,027,000. And it went up to 1.3 at one point, and then 1.2 for a couple of years, and then 1.1. Now it's back down to where we were 10 years ago. And I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, a lot of this has to do with our permanent improvement fund. And I mean, we used to have a lot of money in there. Now we don't. I mean, that fire truck sucked a lot of money out. We did a lot of street repairs. So that fund definitely needs some help. I know we helped out the general fund a couple of years ago with the safety services levy. But this permanent improvement fund, we definitely need to consider going out for a levy or something, because we got a lot of stuff to fix around here.
Mhm.
So that's where most of the cash is leaking out of. It's coming out of there.
Tony, I'd like to stay away from, as much as possible without segregating funds, because at the end of the day, we're trying to inform citizens about what's going on here. And all they understand is that cash is coming in and cash is going out. And so I want to, try to, as much as possible, stay on the big picture, because, we can have this conversation about this fund doesn't have enough of that. But in general, the village is not collecting enough money to properly run the village.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
would you agree with that?
I'm just looking at the general fund as that's where our operating expenses come out
No,
of.
but Tony, for the last 10 years, we've been talking about this $1 million goal for the general fund. And to me, it was a false goal, because as you're saying, the permanent improvement fund was coming down. In essence, I'd rather go to the high level and say, we were not bringing in enough revenue to, in essence, run the village at the level that it was being run. So we got two questions. Can we raise revenue, or do we have to figure out how to run the village for less?
Yeah. We got to figure that out.
and I agree with you, Tony, that the permanent improvement fund is where a lot of the leakages occurred. But I think we've used it. When I went back and looked at some of the historical spend too, we all talked about this last year, making the change to say, look, there's maintenance work that was probably getting charged into the permanent improvement fund.
Right.
That when you read the words used by the state auditor, it's more like for capital funds, because that's one of the names it actually has, right? It's a permanent improvement fund. It's also called the capital fund. And so there's it looks like in the past, putting some maintenance stuff in there that probably should have gone to the general fund. And now we've rectified that. We said, hey, going forward, we want to make sure that, again, permanent improvement fund is really for things that we're adding value to, not just maintaining stuff so they keep running. That those should be, because the other thing that felt weird was we were doing it in some departments, but not all. There were some departments where we were putting stuff into permanent improvement fund, and other departments where we were keeping it in the general fund. And so I think the consistency in how we handle that kind of stuff would be important. And the other thing I wanted to say too is I sent to all of council and to you, Tony, also the Ohio auditor about what causes the village to be labeled critical if it gets down to less than 1 month of spending covered. And at the end of the day, it does look at the total. It starts, to your point, Tony, it starts in the general fund. It starts there. But then they look at all the other funds around it. And then they say, well, okay, if one's under, but you could pull from the general fund, then you're okay. So where it ends up, though, is it ends up eventually being all funds.
Yeah.
And do you have a month's coverage for your total spending? But you're right, they do start in the general fund, but then they expand it and expand it and expand it until it's like all your funds. So I think I'm
just saying that fund needs more help probably than the operating fund at this point.
Yeah. So that's the first graph that Joe helped put together, and we'll continue to just get the numbers tweaked to get to the right numbers. But again, overall picture doesn't really change for that stuff. And then the second one that Joe also put together was the graph that sort of shows how does Mariemont compare, here's Mariemont, versus some of the other communities. We've got Fairfax, Columbia Township, Terrace Park, and Newtown in there. So how do we compare to those other communities in terms of how many months on hand that state auditor measure that we have to be compared to. And again, we're significantly below everybody else in that area. So, and that's not including the debt either. That's purely just cash. That's not the net debt. It's not the net cash. It's gross cash that's being measured in there. So, and I don't know how much debt the other communities have on their books. I do know, I've talked to Terrace Park. I know they have debt. They sort of roll over debt, but I don't know and I don't know how much it is though. And I don't know what the other communities do in terms of debt. So I'm glad that we've kept that out because I don't know how to benchmark on that aspect of it. But again, this number that we're using, 2.7, that's the number the auditor looks at, the state auditor. So, and again, if we get down to 1, then we're labeled critical, and then we would have to do something to intervene. To be very, very clear, I do not think we're going to hit it this year. I don't think we're going to necessarily hit it next year, but I think that we are on a trend line that if we don't do something, we're going to hit that. You know, again, this trend, we're already the lowest of all the neighboring communities. This is our trend overall, and that's the measure overall that the state auditor looks at us on. That's the one that's going to, we have to do something because we're not in a sustainable position. We're going to have to figure out stuff. And I think, we've all talked about this. We need to work on both expenses and revenue on both sides of that. Any comments or questions about either one of those charts? Make sure we're all.
I'm just curious on the Fairfax number, and I know we've talked about this before, but is Walmart their primary source of that cash?
Well, again, I'm sure they're like us. Deanna can't tell us who provides how much cash.
Right.
The tax office can never tell you that kind of stuff. It is, Walmart is in their district, so
right.
they get to tax all the stuff there. Just like, Sports Mall, everything else there on Virginia.
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah.
Everything in Virginia Avenue.
There's a whole string of businesses down there along Old Red Bank. I mean,
yeah. Red Bank Road, all that area.
Restaurants and the tire place. There's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. I didn't get the graphs. Did Joe? Did you send those out separately or?
No, I sent it to you, Bill. Bill. And then
I got everything else. I just didn't.
No, it's the first tab. It's the first 2 tabs. It's a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet has tabs at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Right. Oh.
So it was the first 2 tabs I just went through, and the one you held up is this one. That's the 3rd tab in the same spreadsheet.
All right. Well, I had Joni print it out for me.
Yeah.
Right.
So Kelly,
I should have
a little bit.
Helped you out and get you the.
Yeah, Joe?
Kelly, to answer your question, and these are just things I know from a distance because I've not grabbed their financial statements to dig down deep to try to figure out exactly how they got where they are in the cash. I do believe, because I've heard secondhand, that they've got a couple projects coming up that they may be building their cash balances up to handle, which is the way you're supposed to do it. I mean, you don't wait till the last second and say, oh, I got to take on debt to go pay for a big capital expenditure. But I think they're building up some cash for a couple things they got coming. But on top of that, don't forget that for the last 5 years, they're getting JED money that we had a shot at getting.
Yep.
And that could be increasing the balance.
Yeah.
And I think on top of that, they also have a challenge with their fire department. They're part of that joint district that's got some challenges.
Yeah.
So, sometimes the numbers, look, there are some distinctions between the numbers, but those are the numbers that are out there, and they may be an outlier about how much cash they have on their balance sheet right now, or cash reserves at the end of 2019.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not saying we try to get our cash balances up to that level, but things I've heard along the way, we should probably, be shooting for 9 to 11 months of cash of spending as far as cash on hand.
What cash balance would that require, Joe?
Well, we spend about
Probably a couple million.
Yeah, so do the math. I mean, we spend about 480,000. No, 450. What's 5 million divided by 12?
Yeah,
420.
No, that's not the right one.
416.
So that's about our average spend. 416 times 6, 2.4, 2.5 million.
And we can argue about that level, you know, what it needs to be, but you know, we're probably low where we're at. I mean, as we slide closer to, you know, a 2 or 3 month number, you know, because if we have a significant cash item that pops up, whether some of our infrastructure goes bad or something that has to be addressed, that number could get drained pretty quickly.
Yeah, we need to shoot for about 3.5, 4 million to be in that 6 month range.
Right.
Six times, oh, yes. Well, 6 times 4, whatever, is 2.4, right?
417 times 6.
417.
417 times 6.
2.4.
All right, 2.5. I was thinking more 9. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
My
agree.
analysis or my thoughts are, let's just get it moving in the right direction, and then we can argue about how far it has to go.
Yep.
And, you know, we've all been having the back conversation on, we all know pretty much where this is going. We've all had this conversation. So,
Right. Well, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation, because Tim brought up in a council meeting that some of the employees maybe not have the whole understanding, and trying to make sure we get that. And so I think coming out of this, I think one of the things I would really like to do, building on Tim's request, is to have a meeting with the employees to help educate them on what's going on and what things we think we need to do, both revenue and expense. We got to work on both sides. There's no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet right now. We just got to work on all the things we can. So I'm going to move to the third spreadsheet. This is the third spreadsheet, right? You recognize that? So that's, it's got actuals through May. And so this is something that Joe and I have been passing back and forth. This is my version. Joe and I do our own little versions where we do our own forecasting, but so this is mine. But we've also, because of the COVID stuff, we've broken out the withholding tax and earnings tax at the bottom. And I think what you're seeing is the withholdings tax hasn't been really as negatively impacted, which is great. You know, I thought it was going to be heavily hit, but, and again, Deanna cannot tell us about what's going on and why that is. But I did ask her, my hypothesis is we got a whole bunch of people working up at the high school who aren't normally employees here in this village, and we're collecting income tax on them.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And all Deanna could say was, there is a new source of income that has arrived that she had to check on and make sure. And it was, you know, she didn't say who it was, but she just said it was correct. It was flowing correctly and everything. So I think we've been very fortunate by having that project going on. It's helped us to avoid a significant hit on the withholding tax of things. And then overall earnings tax has really not been as negatively impacted yet. The thing is, we still haven't had the first quarter estimated payment, second quarter estimated payment, or the final payment for, and I don't think the final payment for 2019 is going to be impacted by COVID. I mean, you know, it was already over. Their earnings were done by December.
Right.
31st.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, we'll see that next year.
Yeah, we'll see that in July. We'll get that. What we don't know is the impact on first quarter, second quarter estimated payments. And of course, that's all hitting in July. All 3 of those payments are coming in July. So, the one thing I do know that's going to be a bit of an impact, I didn't put it in here, but I made a note of it. I wrote to myself on the top. So we are transitioning, if you recall, we're transitioning to the annual waste fee is now going to go through on a monthly basis starting in July.
Yeah.
Typically, we bring in $130,000 on that annual waste fee. If we start in July, we're only going to have 6 months of it this year. So we're going to have half. Our income will be down, just that one factor alone, our income will be down about $65,000 this year.
Wow.
Because of moving to that. And it's just because it's the first year, right? You know, it's the first year,
Right. It's
6 months instead of a whole year at one period of time.
Yeah.
Once we get past that, everything will be fine. It's just a startup. So personally, I'm ballparking. This is totally just me estimating. I'm guessing our revenue will be around 4.8 million, 4.850 is what I'm sort of guessing right now. But you got to have a number just to talk about. So that's where I am right now, is 4.850.
850.
We appropriated 4.946. That's how much we had built in the budget. So if we just spent to our budget, we'd be about $100,000 in the hole. So that's why I think that's why we're having these conversations about doing things like delaying Petoskey and other things like that we can try and do to reduce costs.
Can I interrupt? Is that Bill?
Yeah. Bill, Joni's here. Hold on a sec.
Allison needs to know if he still wants her to go ahead and post. If he's had time to look at what she's sending to post.
Bill, are you okay with Allison posting what she sent to you? She sent something to you?
I'll go look at it. You guys go ahead. I'll look.
Okay, I'll come back over.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so again, if we spent up to the appropriate amount, we'd be 100,000 in the hole. The other, so we've already said we've delayed Petoskey. We've also delayed, because Tony had built into the budget doing the code book codification, and so we've delayed that. So those will help. The thing that's interesting is though, we're gonna fund $300,000. What's the latest number, Kelly? What was the latest number for Petoskey? It's down less than 300,000 now, right? It's like what, 280 or something?
I don't know if there was that much of a change, but we can talk with Chris about that on Tuesday.
Yeah, okay. Well, where I was heading with this is, we were going to split the funding between Permanent Improvement Fund and the Street Improvement Fund.
Right.
Well, Street Improvement Fund, we had a $120,000 budget. We've already spent 22, so there's $88,000 left in there. Permanent Improvement Fund, we had a budget of 391. Year to date, we've already spent 182. There's another 50 that has to come out for the second loan payment for the municipal building. So between those two, if we spent no other money in the Street Improvement Fund and the Permanent Improvement Fund, that only leaves $247,000 left.
Just looked it over.
So we don't have enough money to do.
Yeah, I think so. I had to look at it.
So,
It's fine.
and that was sort of an aha for me in just the last couple of days I've been going through these numbers, is looking at how much we've already spent year to date in those two funds that were supposed to provide the funding for the Petoskey project. So it's just another factor. It's another reason why it's delay on that project. So one of the things that, I can get a better feel about the revenue side, to be very honest with you. I don't have as good a feel on the expense side. That's where I don't, because, and I think the department heads, the people who head up those departments are probably the ones who have the best feel about where do they stand in terms of each one of their individual budgets.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's good.
And I think that's where we'll need their help to understand where do you think you're going to end up the year relative to your budget. So,
Hey, Rob,
yeah.
I think that John in the service department might be a really good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some expenditures there that I don't want to say aren't necessary, but might be able to be scaled back a little bit. Well, I mean, already the shed.
Well, yeah, we punted the shed a while ago because it was in the Permanent Improvement Fund.
Right,
So,
right. But I'm just saying, there's of any department that we should probably drill down into, that might be a good one to go for.
Okay. Well, and again, here's what my proposal is. My proposal is number one, let's ask the department heads, where do they think they're going to end up the year relative to their budget? So, we can share with them, here's your spending year to date, and there's the number of the total. I said, that was the other spreadsheet I sent to you guys. So this one, I sent that to you guys as well. So it's got year to date spending by month, by department. And I picked the big departments. I didn't pick the small ones. I didn't pick waste because that's the level. It's the same amount every month, but it's more the ones that have variability to them.
Can you pick that up and show it again? I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one. I'm looking at the right one.
It's got the big blank spot in the middle.
And a bunch of zeros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, I'm going to run into a hard stop here, probably in
Yeah.
about 5 or 10 minutes. So can we get this wrapped up? And just, can I ask a couple quick questions before I run out of time? number one, this budget process, what are we required by law to do by which date? I mean, I think we're talking about having a budget for full council July sometime.
July 13th.
July
13th.
13th, yes.
13th, yeah.
So what are we required by law? I mean, do we have to have something in place for 2021 by some date?
I have to submit it to the county by like a week after that, like the 22nd or 23rd.
Okay, and that could just be preliminary at
Yeah.
that point,
Yes,
right? Because the one thing I'm thinking, the best visibility we're going to get into revenue is going to be when the 2019 returns are finalized and we see the estimates for 2020 potentially. That'll tell us, maybe what we're dealing with on the earnings tax side. But that's, but we're not going to see those numbers until August 1st.
Right.
Yeah, could she run a report like after July 25th or July 15th and see where we're at? I mean, we would know how much she deposited by then.
but Tony, like you said, this is just a placeholder for now anyway. Like this past year, we went ahead and did the placeholder and then we came back and updated the expense side of things because we knew more about what the actual expenses were before we went as we were going into the year. We updated the budgets for everybody. So what you got to put in by law, stop me if I'm wrong. You got a placeholder, we can always go ahead and update that. Is that right?
So I say it again at the end?
You got a placeholder and we can always update that at some
Oh,
point.
yes. So we don't have to do the appropriations until January 1,
Yeah.
But we appropriate based on what we budget typically. But if things change, we can change the appropriations.
So our first goal in this whole process is to try to come up with 2021 budget that we have to have by mid-July. Okay. And we probably won't have better data than what we have right now about, where revenue is going to be. And so we take our best guess on that
We
one.
just make some assumptions. and go with it.
The second part of this process is to try to manage to see where we're at in 2020, both on the revenue and on the expense side. So we have some idea where we're going to wind up at the end of the year. And I think, Rob, that's what we're trying to do with this spreadsheet, is to project revenue and project expense. And we really right now don't have a mechanism in place that we know what each department is going to spend from June through December. And what I think we're going to ask is to try to get that information just in total. We don't really worry about the line items, just so we have a better idea about where we might end up at the end of the year on spending.
Right. Agree. Because I don't have
And then,
right.
okay, but then the third part of that process that we want to try to do is this, what are our options about preserving cash this year if we have to?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
as we work through this process, it sounds like it's going to be Tony kind of coming up with the numbers for that first goal about getting a budget put together. And we can all acknowledge that they're going to be pretty squishy because there's still information that's imperfect at that point, about what the future holds. We're going to keep watching and try to figure out. The second thing is try to figure out how we're going to get through 2020, which is ask the department heads, and this shouldn't take a lot of time, to just project what you think you're going to spend throughout the next 7 months, so we have a better idea where we're going to wind up at the end of the year. Because if we don't do that road project, and I've just kind of run some numbers in my mind, we could actually wind up with a higher cash balance at the end of the year than we started with. But that's a $300,000 swing.
Yeah, but Joe, we wouldn't, based on the fact that we've already postponed it until the fall, we're not going to incur most of those outlays until 2021 anyhow. And
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The $4.9 million appropriation includes $300,000. And again, I'm talking in buckets here. In the bucket in 2020, there's $4.9 million in spending. And what we're thinking is that 300,000 is going to go into 2021 bucket. So depending upon what happens with revenues, we could actually wind up at the end of the year with a higher cash balance than we started the year. But there's things we don't know. But the one piece we don't know is what is that spending number going to be from the departments as we look at the rest of 2020.
Well, I did a little analysis based on the May report, year-to-date report. And based on, we spent 1.487 million, and I just extrapolated that from 5 months to 12 months. And I added $200,000 because we got 2 payrolls coming up or 2 months with 3 payrolls.
Yeah.
And they run about, 90 grand each. So I added in a couple 100,000. We end up about 3.8 million for the general fund. I know we had a budgeted or appropriated about 4 million. So I think we're going to be underneath what we appropriated as far as operating goes, based on what I've seen so far. I know we got extra expenses in the summer. We got to cut the grass and we do some beautification and other type things.
Well, and OWC, workers' comp comes at the very end of the year too, in December.
Yeah.
So we do have, that's the tricky part.
That's
The tricky part is
50,000.
There are some back-end loaded costs that we have to be careful about.
And again, I think our ask is not to have the department heads tell us, down to the last penny what they're going to spend each month, but just give us some idea so we have, and Tony, your process, I understand what you did, but if there's differences in second half spending versus first half spending, that calculation that you did may not hold true.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a rough kind of estimate for now.
Right. But who knows the best about what we're going to spend in the next 7 months is the department heads.
Yeah, I agree.
And I might be wrong. I mean, you're more than free to disagree with me, but I think we need this tool so we know how we're going to get through 2020 at this point.
Yeah, but I don't know if the department heads know how much things cost. I don't know if, they really see the bills.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I gotta say, Joe, I'm more than happy and willing to go around and talk to these guys and try to get them to estimate this stuff down, as close as they can. But boy, I just got a feeling it is gonna be a rough estimate.
Well, but it's better than what we have now. Right?
Maybe I agree, Rob. It could be better. It's better than nothing. And trust me, I'll go around. I'll do the work.
Yeah, because the one other thing, Tony, I totally get what you did too, and it makes sense. The other back half ending is with the pay increase just went into effect partway through April. So when you take 5 months and you say, divide by 5, multiply by 12, that doesn't take into account that people just got a pay raise. And so actually the new running rate is a little bit higher.
Higher,
than
yeah.
it was.
Yeah, I threw in a little extra on the extra payrolls. Instead of 90, I made it 100. I know, so that's a little extra there.
Yeah. So again, I especially now that we have linked the department head's bonus to staying within their budget, I think this would be, I would think they'd want to be able to really get in and understand where their spending is and how do they stand out. On that sheet, I put in here what the budget is, and so here's what the budget is. Where do you think you're going to end up relative to that? Because, if they're going to end up over, maybe there's some things they can do that would help them earn their bonus then too,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think we should do it. It'd be a good exercise for them.
You said a couple of times along the way, most of our budget is payroll anyway, and
Right.
that's easily projected. And then on top of that, we know there's some big ticket items out there that have to be paid at some point, for each department. If we capture those two, we're going to have a pretty good estimate by month what we're spending.
Yeah, like 70% is payroll. Yeah, payroll related.
Right. So at the end of the day, that's why I say it's probably only going to take about an hour per department head to put something like this down on paper. If we give them the right tools to do the analysis.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it takes more than an hour, don't do it.
So just have them do it by month. Like this month, you got 3 payrolls, so figure in X, Y, Z.
Yeah. And actually I
other
highlighted here,
expenses.
I called out where the 3 payroll months are on this PowerPoint.
And
Right,
if I'm
we
not
had
mistaken,
June and November.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So agree with those exercises. The one other thing I think, so Bill, I know you said you've talked to the department heads. The other spreadsheet I sent to you is this, savings and revenue ideas.
Right, I got it.
And I really think we ought to reach out to the department heads for ideas for that too. You know, if they see.
Well,
any ideas-
I have been, and I don't know whether Joe probably doesn't have time now or something. I put together here a memo, or I had Joni put it together. These are some of Joni's ideas, some of Sherp's ideas. I talk on and off with Tim. I don't really have his ideas in here, but the standard response that I'm getting basically, is look, guys, we're running fairly close to the bone here.
Yeah.
I mean, like Joni's ideas, no fireworks, don't open the pool, no leaf collection. I mean, she's really grasping at stuff that, I don't think we just can't consider. I mean, there are some actionable things on here, but they're minor. They're minor stuff.
Mhm.
I really don't know that there's any big number out there other than that road project that Joe talked about.
Well, the one other thing that I think is a bigger number is getting the garbage picked up out front.
Yeah.
The garbage picked up out front. Okay, I'll give you,
So,
yes.
Yeah.
And
And you know what? Let's just assume that's a given. We need a dollar amount, but we're going to assume that's a given.
Yep. So Kelly, you're getting more. So coming out of the last council meeting, you got more stuff put into your committee.
Well, I'm going to say this on that note.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I think it might be time to move the CRA back in economic development. And it came out of that committee but I think that's where it really belongs.
Because I know you've done work with, on some of the garbage pickup stuff too. So because that's going to be a key one. That's going to be a key one. for
Oh,
us.
I agree. Yeah, oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I've had a conversation with, I can't remember the name of the company, Republic. That's who Madeira uses.
okay. Yeah.
So-
So we need to get multiple bids. We need to check with, CLG, Center for Local Government, what would
Yeah.
that cost, and all those kind of things. And I really think Kelly, we ought to, so maybe in the next council meeting, we put that into your committee and get the CRA stuff over back to its original home
Right,
in economic and zoning and planning
Yep.
stuff.
yep.
Okay.
I warned Marcy.
Good. Is there anything else up there in the savings areas? I mean, again, to build to your point, I mean, we pushed back the code book codification, Petoskey. Chief has already said no police car this year. When it comes, we may have missed the window this year, but next year, again, I think we ought to really look at bidding out the street work with other municipalities. They've said that, like, if you can get above 500,000 combined, that it helps to get the price down. You'll draw in the bigger companies that will have an offer a lower price. So next year when we do that.
Yeah, just another thought that came to my mind, we really should work on the fees in the building department. We got to get those fees up.
Well, and yeah, and having a conversation with Hamilton County. I mean, I know right now they can't do anything with the zoning, but it still might be worth looking at just passing on the building fees to them.
Well, that's a much larger discussion because
Right,
that
right.
change. But in the interim or until we ever got there, I mean, there's plenty of room, I believe, to raise the basic building fees.
And maybe just a little more consistency on them.
Yeah.
So
I think that's something that Eileen can help us out with.
So, yeah, because I know Don had gathered some information earlier. So that's down in the revenue section. So now I guess we're moved down there.
Okay,
So I've got there, I put there the sale of the paper street, the $10 per car registration fee that's been passed. Increased court fines. I know Chief has already talked to our magistrate about doing that. Again, one of the things that Chief has put out there many times is, should we be those overnight parking stickers?
yes,
That should we be charging for some of that? But
yes,
I think Kelly, we need to coordinate that with your Public Works Committee because you've got stuff in there about parking in the village. So we need to make sure that those two pieces fit together. And I think it would have to go into effect next year, not this year, but
Right.
next.
right. Well, heck, I haven't seen anybody with a 2020 on their car yet.
Rob, I'm running out of time here quickly.
Okay.
Can we
All right.
get wrapped up?
Yep. So let me just ask, is there anything else on this sheet that we should try and accelerate? Or is there anything I'm missing that we should add? Because again,
I'm good.
to be very honest with you, we've had this list for almost 2 months now and nothing's really been done per se. Some things have been done. But I think I think the finance committee probably needs to push on some of this stuff to make more of it happen. So,
I know Joe's gotta go, but where are we at with the paper street? I mean, that's a done deal,
Just
right?
sent a request. I just sent a request for the first draft of the PSA,
Okay,
and make sure that a survey is getting done by the buyer.
by the buyer. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
okay, so if you guys have anything else, please let me know. We need to really, I think it's going to be incumbent upon the finance committee to start to push some of this stuff about savings ideas or revenue ideas, just try and get things more balanced here overall. What are you gonna say, Joe?
Bill, if you need any additional information to help, talk with the department heads, don't hesitate to ask Rob or I, because there's some stuff I know I've learned in the last 3 months about reports that are available.
Sure.
That could make the process very easy for the department heads to project these costs.
Will do. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's good for Rob and I to have those conversations with the department head. I think that's more the mayor.
No. It's up to me. Yeah. And like I said, I will ask. Trust me, I'll ask.
Okay, anything else, you guys? So it lasted a little longer than I expected, but
Yeah.
it was a good meeting, so.
Yeah.
And then once we get
All
the.
right, see you later. Thanks.
All right,
Thanks,
see you,
everyone.
Joe. Bye,
See you,
Joe.
Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Once we get the bids from Ohio Plan, I'll bring us back together again to go
Okay.
through that stuff, okay? So then we can make a recommendation to council about what we do.
Okay.
Anything else anybody else want to cover? That was on the agenda? We can't cover stuff that's off the agenda, so.
Oh, come on.
Bill, stop.
Okay, if nothing else, then have a good weekend.
Hope to see you Sunday.
See you. I'll be there.
You guys.
You guys-
All right, bye. Hey, Bill, call me when you get a chance.
Will do.
Okay, bye.
Okay. Tony.
See you, Bill.
see
Bye.
everybody again.
Bye, Tony.